Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to all attending the webinar today on moving forward through change and adversity. My name is Christine Kritzas, and I am a counseling psychologist and the education director here at Lighthouse Arabia. And I'm looking forward to spending the next hour with all of you speaking about such a pertinent topic as change and transition, and bouncing back from difficult times. And we are still in difficult times. We are still going through a lot of changes and transitions. We are still in a pandemic. And I think that, making space to reflect on how far we've come during this time and where we're going during this time is of paramount importance. Just some general housekeeping before we get started. I will be sharing the recording with you post-session. And if you have any questions during the session, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A section at the bottom of your control panel. And I'm going to be sharing my screen with all of you now. Just one moment. Great. So can I see a show of hands? How many of you can see and hear me clearly? Great. Right. So just a bit about the Lighthouse Arabia. We are a mental health and wellness center located in central Dubai, where we offer psychological services and psychiatric care to individuals across the lifespan. We also offer occupational therapy and speech and language therapy to children specifically. And since the onset of the pandemic, we have moved majority of our services online, and I will share more with you about that at the end of our session. But without any further delay, I want us to get into today's agenda and to understand what you will be walking away with after attending the session. The first thing we'll be looking at is the difference between change and transition. And I think that these two words are used interchangeably, okay? And I think it is important that we differentiate between these two words because, when you use a word like transition as part of your lexicon, it allows you to move through these changes more gracefully. Okay, it allows you to understand that something has happened and that this is going to take some time for me to adjust to it. Okay, and we're also going to look at the 3 stages of transition. And then I will walk you through the top 5 things you need during a transitional period. And I know that I am joined here today by some managers, some leaders. I think on some level, all of us are leading something, even if it is not in the workplace. You could be a parent, and so you are leading your children. You could be a trusted friend, so you are influencing another person during a time like this as well. So just to understand what we're going to be looking at today, and what I will say here is that over the last 18 months or so, people have lost so much and people have gone through so many different changes. If it is that, it may be that there's some freedom that has been lost. Whereas in the past, and I've spoken to many of my clients who've shared with me that they just love the idea of travel. And on weekends, they would often do very short trips out of the region. And to not be able to experience that anymore, to not be able to experience rituals such as graduations, to not be able to experience the ritual of a beginning, such as a wedding, or the ending of something, such as a funeral, to not be able to see our friends in person, to not be able to make future plans because you don't know what's going to happen next. And So that sense of normalcy has been taken away, that security when it comes to our finances, the economic certainty that we once had was also taken away during a time like this, with a lot of restructuring happening in organizations, a lot of people being made redundant, and you're not knowing if you're next to go. And so it's important that we take stock of this and understand that these changes and losses are ongoing during a time like this. And I think it's also important to highlight the winds of change that we see. And something that I've seen over the past 5 years of living in this region is that a lot of changes start to occur and unfold in the May and June of the year. So around May, June of the year, we start seeing a lot of changes occurring because decisions are usually made around the cycle of the school. And the school cycle comes to an end in May, June. And so we often see that couples decide to get a divorce in May, June. They decide to leave their country and go to another country in May, June. They decide to quit their job. They decide to apply for a new job at the end of the school year. And so we see a lot of these changes occurring, not only in employment status, but it can also be the ending of certain relationships and children graduating, right? So just important to know that, you know, in this region that we often see that happening in the May and June of the year. Now, what is the difference between change and transition? As I mentioned earlier, these two words are often used interchangeably, okay? And what we know is that the biggest difference here is that change happens in an instant, okay? Change happens overnight. And change is something that happens externally, whereas transition is something that happens internally. It's a process of something. It's something that usually involves grieving the loss of something, i.e. the old, and adjusting to the new, right? So transitions are best when they are approached intentionally and when we actually that during a time of change and transition, it is so important that you name the change. So whether it be in the company that you're working, that you name the change, that the manager has resigned. And so this is going to create a bit of feelings of uncertainty. We're going to feel a bit unsettled. We're going to go through a transition now as a result of that change. So very important that we acknowledge and name the change because it makes it easier for us to move through that period, right? And so just to note the difference here between the two, okay? So changes are often inevitable, but the way we transition through them is optional. Now, I want to use the metaphor of reconstruction when I explain the change model and managing transitions. Let's imagine that you've got a big wall in your home, okay? And this wall is a blue wall, right? You decided to paint it blue many years ago, okay? And so this big blue wall in your home one day gets knocked down, okay? And it's the ending of that big blue wall. It got knocked down. And there is some rubble now that is on the floor as a result of this big blue wall being knocked down. And the next day, someone comes in and clears the rubble away. And there's no wall, there's no rubble, there's just nothing. And that's the neutral zone. It's not really a neutral zone, it's actually a zone of ambivalence. And then comes the new beginning, the building of a new wall, okay? So important to understand that we're going to go through 3 stages here, and I'm going to use this metaphor throughout to explain these stages to you. So when we lose something, it's often not by choice. And sometimes it is by choice, but people are being forced to let go of something that was comfortable or familiar to them. This can be the ending of a relationship. And let's say that relationship was an abusive relationship. It was still a comfortable place to be because you knew what to expect. You knew when to expect it, right? Even though it was a toxic way when it was coming your way, or you didn't know when it was coming your way. And so it was about getting used to that specific relationship in your life. And then that gets taken away. And your reality has then just been altered, okay? You start seeing things quite differently. Your identity has had to change as a result of the loss of that relationship. Okay, let's say you were married to someone and all of a sudden you are now getting a divorce and your last name also has to change. Your identity has to change. You're not anymore a wife or a husband. You're just you. Okay, so I just want you guys to think of any change that you've been through recently and to understand that whenever there is a change, there is a loss of something. To understand that even if it is a positive change, there is a loss of something. So let's say you become a parent, right? You become a mother or you become a father. You've gained a child. What you've lost is some of your independence. What you've lost is some of your freedom, okay? So there's always something that's got to give. It can be that you become a parent. It can be that you've let go of single life and you've become married. It can be that you've let go of a specific role in your organization and you've been promoted to another role. So there's a change, there's a loss of the old role, there's a gain of the new role, okay? So just important that we be aware of the fact that we can experience changes on different levels, and there are going to be some feelings that are going to come with these changes, okay? And at this stage, when that wall has just been broken down, you are going to possibly be in denial that that actually happened. You might go to bed that night and wake up the next morning thinking that everything was just a bad dream, only to see that there's rubble on the floor. There may be that you are, experiencing fear. You may experience anger. You may feel guilty. What if I did this and this? Would the wall still have broken down? You may experience some disorientation, some frustration and uncertainty. And I will say that the definition of emotional maturity is being able to hold two different emotions at the same time. We can experience more than one feeling at a time. And, even when your child graduates from school, you will need to hold different feelings around that graduation. There may be a feeling as a parent of being so proud, so proud of your child for having graduated, so proud of yourself for having, survived all those years of having a school-going child. But there may also be a loss for you of the fact that your child will now be leaving home and that your child won't be, driving with you to school in the mornings and having that school chat on the way. So it's important that we know that we can hold 2 or more feelings at the same time. And when we allow ourselves to speak of ourselves in parts, we experience a freedom. So a part of me feels sad that I won't be able to travel home over Christmas, but a part of me feels relieved that I don't have to budge when I have 2 kids under the age of 5, because I know traveling with 2 kids under the age of 5 is really hard. So do you see how we can speak of ourselves in parts? And it's really important during that initial stage to allow yourself permission to feel all of your feelings. And, you know, as a leader, it would be important to be as honest as possible about the changes that are occurring in the organization, to be as honest as possible about the changes that are occurring in the home. Let's say, for example, parents have decided to separate and are in divorce proceedings. It is really important that they are as honest as possible with their children around the upcoming change and what they will expect. Obviously, these these communications need to be age appropriate too, but you need to clearly state what the objective was of the change. You need to emphasize that your team will be able to apply some skills and experience and knowledge to this change, and that during this change, you're going to hold the space for your team to be able to come back to you with their questions. Now, I don't know if any of you have watched New Amsterdam, which is a series on Netflix. I don't know, can I see a show of hands? How many of you have watched New Amsterdam? Now, this is a show, and in this specific show, there is a medical director, Dr. Max Goodwin. And a key phrase that Dr. Max Goodwin uses throughout the series is, how can I help? He shows up wherever, whenever, and he will often ask, how can I help? How can I be of help? And as a leader, especially during this time, you're going to need to ask your team, what do you need and how can I help you, right? And if you have any questions, feel free to circle back with me so that I can respond to those questions, and create an opportunity to have everyone share what it is that they're feeling, and understanding that different people are going to feel different things, right? Allowing your team time to accept the change, allowing your children time to accept the change, whether it be that you're going through that divorce or you're moving home or you're moving country, allow them time to process it. Understanding that everybody processes things really differently. I have a friend, and she often will say to me, you know, I'm a bit of a turtle when it comes to change. And it is so true. It takes her time to process something. And maybe weeks later, she'll come back to me and say, you know, I've been thinking about what you said 2 weeks ago. And now upon reflection, I'm thinking this, this, and this. Whereas for the next person, they can process it in that moment, right? So just important to understand that when we are guiding people through this first stage, it's important that we give them time, that you allow 4 to 6 weeks for people to move through the stage, okay? And if you are in a leadership position, remember to not make this about you. Remember that you need to serve as a container for your team. You need to be that container. You need to be the one that is holding the fort, okay? And if you are going in saying to your team, you think that's bad, I'm having to deal with X, Y, and Z because of this change. And that could easily become an empathic fail. That can easily make your team feel like, okay, you're not really hearing what we're going through. You're making it all about you. You're making it seem like you're the only one that's experiencing difficulties. Yeah. Right? And so you want to create space and have certain ask me anything forums, give your team accurate information again and again, right? And ensuring that the workload for the remaining team isn't insurmountable. It isn't something that they cannot deal with, right? Very important during a time like this is giving people permission to grieve. It's important to accept everyone's resistance. It's important to understand their emotions, right? And just giving them that space to grieve the loss of something, to mark the ending of something, right? Yesterday I did a in-person talk for a corporate, okay? And what I found was so interesting that while I was standing there doing this in-person talk, I felt like this was such a change, because I'm actually not having to say to people, raise your virtual hand. I had to say to people, can you please raise your real hand if you have a question, or can you please show me some real hands? Who has this happened to? It was such a strange experience for me, and it was marking the ending or the transitioning of something where we are now in a hybrid mode, where I'm doing talks online and now I'm starting to do talks in person. And it just felt really weird, right? And I had a client a few weeks back say to me that, they were busy going through some restructuring in their organization. And when she returned back to work after the summer, the Nespresso machine wasn't there anymore. The coffee machine was not there anymore. And so being aware that, even those small changes, try to avoid the small changes, because there's so many big changes happening. Leave them the Nespresso machine, because that was a sense of security, and people can pick up when you change small things, and even the small things make them feel unsettled and uncertain, because that was part of their routine, coming in the mornings, drinking a cup of Nespresso, and then going up to the office. And now all of a sudden the Nespresso machine's not there anymore, and we're having to drink instant coffee. Okay, so being aware of this, remember to be grateful for the team that still exists. Remember to be grateful for the things that still remain, and show your thanks and show your gratitude for that. And in a time like this, as a leader, you want to make sure that your team is using their resources. You want to communicate to them that there are support groups available. At Lighthouse Arabia, we have online free support groups for the public on a variety of different subjects. There's also, it could be a good idea to offer counseling support to your teams in a time like this. And then we find ourselves shifting into the neutral zone. The neutral zone is actually anything but neutral. It's ambiguous zone. It's ambivalent feelings. It's mixed feelings. You're in the middle of the road. It's like, have you ever crossed the road before? I'm sure all of you have. Have you ever crossed the road where it wasn't necessarily a zebra crossing of sorts? Okay, have you ever jaywalked, which means you just crossed in the middle of the road anywhere, and you find yourself in the middle of the road waiting for the cars to pass so that you can step across to the other side? Now, the neutral zone is you standing in the middle of the road, okay, right? And it's just an uncomfortable place to be. You're like not quite sure. The way I can explain it is, let's say you've just bought a new car, and at some point you experience a bit of buyer's remorse, just because you're uncomfortable with this change. You really liked your old car. It served you well, but you had to change it for some reason. That buyer's remorse is that neutral zone. Or it is that you've recently gotten married. Like something feels a bit uncomfortable about this. You enjoyed having your own bedroom, your own bathroom. Now all of a sudden you're having to share this space. Okay. So during this stage, it can make people feel a bit confused, a bit uncertain, right? And the experience of the neutral zone is essentially one of emptiness, right? It's like you've left the old space and you're not yet in the new space, so you're somewhere in between. right? So it is like a bridge, okay? And in some ways, people are still attached to the old and they still want the old, but they're trying to adapt to the new, and it's difficult. And so the feelings during this stage can often be that of grief. A lot of grief can come up for people. I miss our old home. I don't know if I like this new home. I really missed our old coffee table. I don't know if I like this new coffee table, right? Simple things sometimes. I miss that old relationship, even though maybe it wasn't good for me, but I miss, that the constant check-ins I would get. It can make people feel insecure. You can even have a bit of resentment towards the change and towards the people that brought the change along. And just anxiety and skepticism about the change that can also occur. Right? So these are some of the feelings that we may experience. And how do we guide people through this time? Because it is an uncomfortable time. And so during a time like this, it's important to remember that we are tribal people. We need a sense of community. And during a time like this, to bring your team together, to give them that sense of belonging. I know that during COVID, something that we did at Lighthouse Arabia for our team was we introduced the Fitbit challenge, right? And so here I am wearing my Fitbit still. And we have Fitbit teams within the Lighthouse Arabia, and we would have competitions, we would train as a team together, just to give us that sense of being one and being united in some way. And so, it may even be that online you are doing a cook-off with a friend, or you coming together as a community in some way or another. And very important not to disengage from your people during a time where things seem to be okay. You still need to keep your finger on the pulse of the team. You still need to check the team morale and encourage feedback during this time, right? And another way of doing this is to have frequent check-in points with your team, whether it be a team meeting or whether it be that as a leader, you send your team members individual WhatsApp messages, just saying, hey, didn't get time to catch up during team meeting with you today. Just wanted to hear how things are going. How is your child settling back into school? How's that, that puppy of yours doing? Find a place to connect with people. Actively and regularly update your staff on the rebuilding process. Guys, this is what's happening. This is what is still changing. This is what will be changing in the next 6 weeks' time. Give them a timeline of what to expect, when to expect it, right? And you want to keep validating that this is not comfortable. You want to create realistic short-term goals. You want to have quick wins. You want to have those frequent check-in points, and protect your people from further changes as much as possible. And when I say protect them, do not change the Nespresso machine. They like the Nespresso machine. Find another way to cut back on costs, because that Nespresso machine is actually a meeting point for many people. They come together, they speak while they're making their coffee. So keep the small things there. You're changing big things, remember? Keep the small things in place, okay? Don't overcommit to things you cannot deliver, right? Because trust can be very fragile during a time like this. Do not overpromise things and underdeliver, right? So just important to keep all of these in mind as we move through these changes. And then we enter the period of new beginnings, okay? And in the new beginnings phase, people have now crossed the road, okay? And if we're using the wall metaphor, I want you to imagine that big blue wall that was up in your home that got knocked down has now been replaced with a big yellow wall, And in the center of this yellow wall is a window. And now it's like the psyche is having to readjust to this new visual. There's a wall, it's the same size as the previous wall I had, but it's a different color. And now I can see through the wall because there's a window. So I can see across to the other side. And so there's now perspective taking that's happening. There's an openness to new experiences. There's a new energy that you bring. There's this renewed commitment. And still there can be anxiety because there's still a change that's happening and unfolding. Because by now we're at the 6 to 7 week mark, right? And as a leader, you have a bigger duty to get this part right and to be a giver to your people and to remember to practice what Dr. Max Goodwin does in New Amsterdam, where he's saying, how can I help? What do you need? Right? Because if we have high expectations of our team, you got to make sure you have high support. Because if you have high expectations of your team, but you have low support, you're going to lose them, right? So make sure you're matching that. High expectations, high support, right? So very important that we are aware of that we are also still accepting that some people are still going to be ambivalent about this change. Some people are still going to question this new wall. Why is there now a window? I don't want to see across to the other side. I like the way it was before. So you need to continue having these conversations, keep having these check-ins, make sure they're frequent, and celebrate the new beginning and honor the changes, right? As a reminder of this difficult journey we've been through. We don't want to forget the past. We don't want to make as though the past didn't exist, right? We might even put a picture of the blue wall on this yellow wall as a reminder of where we came from and where we are now, right? We want to honor the past and honor the journey and watching our own actions to make sure that you're modeling the attitudes and behaviors that you're asking other people to develop. This is about servant leadership. Right? Servant leadership is focusing on supporting your colleagues first and then providing service to your clients. Traditional leadership is focusing on making sure the client is okay and then only focusing on your colleagues. So servant leadership is the way we want to move forward here. And you want to lead by example, and you want to remember that not everyone is going to get to this point at the same time. You need to be patient. You need to remember that people can still slip back into the neutral stage or into the stage of loss, right? Depending on what their coping mechanisms are like, okay? And understanding that when people's coping mechanisms are outweighed by their stresses, when the scale tilts, they are more susceptible to experiencing stress, burnout, anxiety, depression. Be on the lookout for your team during a time like this and equip yourself with the necessary skills to be able to pick up if they are struggling. And I can share more with you about that at the end of this session. Now, what are 5 things we need to take with us when we're moving through transitions? And I will say that the most important thing, your number 1 priority whenever you undergo a change, is to ensure the psychological and physical safety of yourself and those around you. And how do we create safety for people? Routine. Routine is the antidote to anxiety. Routine is the antidote to stress, right? Routine is the antidote to the changes that are happening. So how do we get into some sort of rhythm in our day? How do we get into some sort of routine for our day? And it's very important that you take care of your physical needs during a time of transition and change, okay? And what do we have control over? We have control over our physical bodies. So you take on a bottom-up approach, right? And what do you need to remember here is that in order for you to see clearly, you are going to need to take care of your physical body in order for you to have clear vision for what it is you need to do next. You're going to need to take care of your physical body in order for you to make effective decisions. You're going to need to take care of your physical body. Now, I don't know if any of you can see, no pun intended, but the first letter of sleep, the first letter of exercise, and the first letter of eat. It makes up the acronym C. And if you want to see clearly, you got to make sure you're getting your 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. You got to make sure that you're moving your body on a daily basis, even just 20 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, right? And you got to make sure you're eating right, because we know that the gut is the second brain, and the gut is responsible for creating the serotonin. 90% of our serotonin is formed in the gut, and the serotonin is the happy chemical that is responsible for mood and positive mood. So very important that you are managing not only your time, but also managing your energy during a transition period, and allowing yourself space to vent, allowing yourself space to, reflect on what is happening, right? Give yourself space to grow during a time like this. Do not overschedule yourself. Do not hyperschedule your kids. Do not hyperschedule yourself, right? Because be aware of the decision fatigue that can come from having to do too many things. The one thing that I really appreciated about lockdown was that there weren't many decisions to be made. You didn't have an elaborate wardrobe because you weren't going anywhere, so you didn't have to think about what you're going to wear, right? You had fewer things that were on your plate at that time. For many people, for some people, there was a lot on their plate, right? So understanding that decision fatigue can really be an energy drainer, right? So leaving space, and then creating time for adjustment. There's something beautiful that happens in 40 days. And, our psyche adjusts itself in 40 days. Human beings are far more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. We have a natural capacity to heal after a loss. And so the 40 days are needed, and in this time to be gentle with yourself. And when we think about a loss, it's like walking around with an open wound. You've got to be careful. You've got to give yourself time to adjust. You've got to protect this wound. You've got to be gentle with yourself during a time like this. And it's not only physical wounds that we can experience, but it's psychological wounds that we can experience as well. And if you have been wounded psychologically, you're going to need to give yourself space to process. And that may come in the form of journaling, that may come in the form of speaking to a trusted friend, that may come in the form of being in your own therapy process. And I'm a firm believer in therapy, not only because I am a therapist, but because I'm in my own therapy process. I have a therapist, he's based in Seattle, and I meet with him every second week. And I find it to be a space to just unpack and to explore and to grow, right? So very important that we allow ourselves the time to grieve. We allow ourselves to understand that this is going to take place in waves. There's no fast track here. The only way to get over something is to move through it, right? So this is something that we need to go through. It's not something we need to just get over. And you need to allow yourself time to grieve what it was, how it used to be, that big blue wall. What did it give me? And what does it feel like to not have it anymore? And what does it feel like now to be looking at a yellow wall with a window? What is that like for me? What is it like to have lost that relationship? What is it like to have lost that role? Okay, of how I used to be, what I used to be. And so I think just creating that time and rediscovering, right? So rediscovering things, rediscovering life. It's normal for other parts in your life to change when one thing changes. You know, when you go through a transition like a divorce, and I actually had a client share with me the other day that since their divorce, they found that, you know, they lost a lot of friends during that divorce. And so it wasn't just one thing that changed, their whole social structure changed. And so, you know, to be prepared for the multiple changes that will occur as a result of one change. And when you're going through a transition and when you are growing as a person, be prepared to lose people along your journey. Be prepared to, you know, not be able to tolerate certain relationships anymore. As your self-worth increases, as, you know, you start loving yourself more, the less you're going to be able to tolerate people who are disrespectful and people who are critical, right? Because you're just operating at a different frequency. So taking time to rebuild your life and building new learnings into your routine for getting that sense of normalcy and productivity back in place, okay? And very important to anchor yourself in the present moment, to have gratitude, because grief without gratitude is a lot heavier to carry. So how can we hold gratitude alongside our grieving process? And I think it's really important to have something like a gratitude jar in your home and to remind yourself of the things that you're grateful for and to, you know, just take stock, right? Even on your morning walk, to be grateful for the trees outside, to be grateful for nature, to stop and just take it in, right? So remember gratitude along this journey. And then self-compassion is key here. You know, we need to learn how to transmute this inner critic of ours, because we all, on some level, have an inner critic. And the inner critic, I often like to, you know, describe them to my clients as being that friend that has zero social skills. Do you know of a friend that always like puts their foot in their mouth, that always says the wrong thing at the wrong time? And you think, oh my gosh, they always seem to say the wrong thing at the wrong time. They mean well, but they just don't know how to say things sometimes. Do any of you have a friend like that? I for sure do. And, you know, I know that that friend means well, but sometimes the way they deliver something, that delivery of that message is sometimes quite harsh, right? And so how can you transmute the inner critic into your inner guide? So instead of seeing the inner critic as the enemy, start seeing the inner critic as a friend and take that message. So let's say that, you know, you dropped a ball at work. You know, you forgot to hand something in. You missed the deadline. Instead of saying to yourself, gosh, you're so disorganized, can you rather take that and transmute it into, Christine, you need to be more prepared. Christine, it may be a good idea to start using Google Calendar. Christine, it may be a good idea to start setting reminders on your phone, okay, so that you can remember. And now look how different that is from saying to myself, you're so disorganized, to saying, Christine, it would be a good idea to start using Google Calendar so that you can remember certain things, right? So try and relate to this inner critic in a curious, kind, and compassionate way. And one way of doing this is to practice Tara Brach's RAIN method. Recognize what's going on inside of you. Allow yourself space to experience that experience as it is and investigate it with kindness, right? And then like nurturing yourself, attending to things with that natural awareness, right? Which comes from identifying with the experience. If you want to learn more about Tara Brach's RAIN method, Google it. You will come across a lot of her content, and she's just such a compassionate being, and it's just beautiful to hear her speak about how we need to practice self-compassion, right? So when you feel overwhelmed, remember rain. And then finding meaning. I think that it's important to understand that pain is inevitable in life, but how we choose to move through that pain is optional. And what meaning can I make from these experiences that I've experienced? Because when we make meaning of the suffering, it brings about a different perspective for us. And as Viktor Frankl once said, in some way, suffering ceases to be suffering at the point it finds a meaning, such as the meaning of a sacrifice. And so meaning can look like reminding yourself of and being grateful for the blessings you have in your life, having the ritual around the goodbye, deepening the friendships that you have, time to re-examine your priorities and goals, and also just, just understanding that when we are experiencing pain, it's important that we understand that, it's not that you should be wishing to never experience pain in your life, because that would be unrealistic, but that you wish to make meaning of the pain that you experience in your life. That you pray that the pain that you experience makes you more open, makes you more compassionate, makes you more wholehearted in your being and more authentic as a person. Because what we know is that what we resist will persist. And so it's important that we embrace our pain and that we try and find a way to make meaning of the pain that we experience. And this brings me to the end of our session. And if you found the content of the session useful, please feel free to check out our main Instagram page at Lighthouse Arabia, where we're sharing pertinent, relevant information around mental health and well-being. Our managing director and clinical psychologist, Dr. Salia Afridi, also shares a lot on her page, which is related to guiding people through the process of transformation and personal growth. And then we have our parenting pages on Instagram, where we share authentic advice around real parenting. And then we also have something that I didn't mention earlier, is that I'm the creator of a children's board game named Smart Heart Board Game, which aims at facilitating emotional intelligence in kids. And so we have that page as well that you can take a follow and have a look at how to cultivate more emotional intelligence in your children and as well as in yourself. And then we also have a page for our youth at Lighthouse Insight, and then also a TikTok page for our TikTokers at Lighthouse Arabia. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen now so that I can allow some time for some questions. So if you just give me a moment. Right. So I'm going to allow some time for questions. I'm going to have a look at what's in the Q&A. Right, I just saw a thank you. You're most welcome. I'm glad you appreciated it. I've just been asked if we can get a copy of this presentation. Yes, it will be sent through to you post-webinar. Any other questions? So if there aren't any questions coming through, something that I can share with you is as leaders in your organization and as individuals who are wanting to take care of your own mental health and see to the mental health of your employees, your teams, your families, we run a mental health first aid training for the public where we teach adults how to detect and how to respond to someone who is struggling with a mental health difficulty like depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and how to support someone who is going through a mental health crisis like suicidal thoughts or suicide attempt or panic attacks or recently experienced a trauma of sort. So In this training, you learn how to detect depression, anxiety, substance abuse. You learn how to respond to someone who is experiencing a mental health difficulty or is in crisis, and you learn how to get them the appropriate professional support. And we run this training for the general public, and we can also come into your organization and do a training specifically for your team, right? So if you want to learn more about this, please feel free to reach out to us on Instagram. You can DM us on our @Lighthouse Arabia page. You can DM me on our @Smart Heart board game page. And I'd be happy to share some more information with you about that. I see here, there's a question, very interesting, and I need to know what you do when all that is said does not work. Then what? Interesting. So when all that is said does not work, I'm going to suggest that you start very small and that you build in small, consistent habits, right? And work on those. And if you're finding that you are struggling with some of the tips and strategies and that something isn't shifting, I would recommend that you get into an individual therapy process, because it is really important during a time like this not to go at it alone, okay? And to get in the appropriate professional support that you need. Because if it is that you're experiencing symptoms of depression or anxiety or burnout as a result of these changes that are ongoing, it is really important that you understand that an hour webinar is not going to cut it. And that, you know, this is sharing and creating and raising awareness, but at the same time, you're going to need some professional support on the side as well. So, I see another question here about any resource. I think that as far as apps go, when it comes to, you know, taking care of the physical body, I can suggest the Calm app, the Headspace app. These are great apps for learning about meditation, the Breathwork app. As far as books are concerned, I think Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl is a great read. For those of you who haven't read it, it's one of those books that you can reread over and over again. And, you know, if it is that you're trying to build new habits, I would suggest reading Atomic Habits by James Clear, a great read. So basically develop new neural paths. Is that what you are referring to? That is part of it. That is part of the work that needs to be done. Creating new neural pathways. And so a way of doing that is to, you know, get into a meditation practice, is to get into a therapy process, because part of therapy is going back. Part of therapy is looking at the core beliefs. Part of therapy is looking at our mindset. It's starting to create some mindset shifts of how we perceive the changes that are occurring and how we make meaning of the changes that occurred. And so part of therapy is often also reframing, you know, looking at things through a different lens, getting different perspectives on things. So I think it's a combination of things that need to be done, not just one thing. I see my healing journey as an holistic journey that I'm on. I have a therapist that I work with every second week. As I mentioned earlier, I have a yoga teacher that I see twice a week as part of my own physical well-being. I have a spiritual healer that I meet with once a month. And so I don't think it's just one thing that we do. I think it's ongoing, and I think it's, you know, trying different things and being open to trying different things. You're most welcome. Thank you for coming and attending the session today. Thank you for your kind words. And something important to remember is that the teacher appears when the student is ready. So the reason that you're finding this session useful is because you're ready to receive this information today. So if there aren't any further questions, what I will do is I will share the screen with you again. If you would like to go and have a look at these pages, feel free to do so. Google, please feel free to do so as well, because this is where people come and seek out professional support first, is coming and having a look at our Google reviews. And so if it is that you found the content relevant here today, we would love to get some feedback from you, and really do appreciate you guys taking the time to attend the session. I don't see any other questions coming through. I see people raising their hands. If you do have any questions, I will hang around until 1 o'clock, so feel free to pop them in the chat. I'm not going anywhere. You've got me for the full hour. Right. What I can also share with those of you who are interested is our parenting platforms for the parents out there. If you are looking for new ways to engage with your children, or ways of teaching kids about values, we are quite a values-driven community, and so we like to focus on values-driven parenting as opposed to rules-driven parenting. And so you'll see we share a lot of interesting content on our Lighthearted Parenting platform, and our Smart Heart board game platform is really around raising emotional intelligence. And we know that even some adults struggle with emotional expression. So it's about getting into the habit of teaching kids eye language. And so this game really helps with giving children a platform for that emotional expression and broadening the emotional vocabulary. So if you have any questions about the game, please feel free to check out our pages at Smart Heart Board Game, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have there. You're welcome to DM me over there. I'll take any of your questions there as well. Right. Okay, so this brings us to the end of our session then for today. Thanks all for sticking around, and I hope for those of you who are based in the UAE that you're enjoying the new weather. It's been beautiful being out early morning. Make the most of this time. Remember to take stock of the small blessings in life. To bed at night to think of one thing that went right today, and one thing that you're grateful for, and one small blessing. Okay. Right. Take care, everybody. Goodbye.